Okay, I went a little crazy with my makeup. It got out of hand, but I'm just rolling with it because that's what you do in Hollywood, so you're not allowed to laugh. Oh no. I was going for like late 60s. Anyway. My name's Vanessa. Welcome back to my channel. I love music history and pop culture history, and today we're going to be talking about the Monkees. Again, this is part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, please watch part 1 first, and then come back to this one. Last time, we left off with the Monkees gaining control. Michael Nesmith had punched a wall next to the lawyer of Cole Jim's Records. His head, he punched the wall and said, "That could have been your face, motherfucker." And they got all of their rights to record music and do whatever they wanted. Kind of. Also, I kind of changed up my background a little bit for Easter. Okay, so originally the Monkees' third album was going to follow the format of the previous two, but as we know, Michael Nesmith united with Peter Tork, they were becoming increasingly frustrated with the lack of control in the band. Recording sessions for this third album had begun under Don Kirshner, with session musicians and Davy Jones on the vocals. The group did record 2 songs where they did all of the singing and the playing to try to prove to Kirshner that they could play, but Kirshner was adamant that they should not begin recording their own music. So before the whole explosion in the hotel room where Michael Nesmith punched a wall, they were trying to raise their concerns to Kirshner previously, like exhaustion from filming, hours putting into their tour and their recording schedule. It was just so much that they were so exhausted. That is when the punch in the wall happened. And all of that is what led to the new agreement between Don Kirshner and the Monkees, which Kirshner immediately broke, which resulted in him being fired from working with the Monkees. Any tracks that had been recorded for the third album that were recorded under Kirshner have been scrapped and they completely started over. The third album is this one, Headquarters. Headquarters was released on May 22nd, 1967, and it immediately went to number 1 on the charts. Every song on the album was performed by the Monkees, and most of them were also written by the Monkees. Boyce and Hart, the long-term songwriters for the Monkees, did have 3 writing credits on the album. Boyce Farthing Hallfeld? What? Hang on. Well, shit. There are no credits on here. Oh, Douglas Farthing Hatley is the name I was looking for, which is this guy, if you can see him. One song was credited to Hank Chicalo. He was the recording engineer, and it was just their way of saying thank you to him. This is Hank. Editing me here, that's not Hank. So apparently there were 2 different back covers of Headquarters, and the one that I have is the original, and then they re-released it without fixing the caption, but they changed the picture. So the guy in that picture that I showed you is not Hank. I will insert a picture here, I guess. Here's a quote on the back of the album I think is really nice. "We aren't the only musicians on this album, but the occasional extra bass or horn player played under our direction, so that this is all ours. Each one of us has some musical thing, from Manchester to Texas, from the East Coast to the West, and when 4 people just go with their thing, what comes out is a whole. Don't ask, a whole what? Just listen. If only the smallest part of how much fun it was to make this record gets heard, it's all worthwhile." So Headquarters stayed at number 1 for 1 week before it was bumped out of the top spot by Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Headquarters did stay at number 2 for 11 weeks. The album is a mix of a variety of different genres: country, rock, pop, some avant-garde stuff like the song Zilch. It's all spoken word. Another really interesting song that was included on this album is one that's called Randy Scouse Git. Okay, my cat has joined us. We'll see how that goes. She's gonna rub against the tripod. Sparks? Oh. Oh. Randy Scouse Git was written by Mickey Dolenz. In February of 1967, Mickey Dolenz went to London for interviews and then met up with none other than Paul McCartney. They met up at a disco in London, and then Paul and Mickey would go back to Paul's place where they would listen to some unreleased music and just hang out with each other. A few days later, Michael Nesmith joined Mickey and spent time with Paul as well. Oh, here comes my cat. Hi, Sparks! She likes bags. And hitting people. She likes that too. So, a fun fact, when Michael Nesmith and Mickey Dolenz were over there, I think this is how Nesmith ended up in the video for A Day in the Life, the Beatles song. And so the Beatles threw the Monkees a party at a nightclub, and that's basically what the song Randy Scouse Git is about. Sparks is now on her JCPenney bag, vintage JCPenney bag from 2016. So if you hear crinkling, that's why. She does not care about anybody but herself. Okay, so I'm going to break down some of the lyrics to this song for you because it's, once you know, you know, you know? So, the four kings of EMI were the Beatles. And then Cass Elliot, also known as Mama Cass, from the Mamas and the Papas, was there, as well as Samantha Just, who would later become Mickey's wife. She had worked on Top of the Pops, so that's why she was there. She's a wonderful lady and she's mine, all mine. That's about Samantha Just. The song is set up kind of weird. It follows like the normal verse, chorus format, and a bridge. It has a bridge. But the lyrics are kind of disjointed because the verses describe the party that they went to, and the chorus is really just the narrator yelling about the abuse that he has taken, saying things like, why don't you cut your hair? Why don't you go up there? I think that this was included because in the 1960s it was very prevalent that a lot of guys who wore their hair longer were discriminated against, or at least bullied. And you can see that portrayed in movies like Alice's Restaurant.
Hey, honey, what happened to your long-haired girlfriend? He was thinking of asking you two for a date.
Don't rile her, Jen.
Can't you tell she just came from the beauty parlor?
Is a good example. I think there are some scenes in the Monkees movie, which we'll get to that later. So the title, Randy Scouse Git, is kind of weird, but it's basically all British slang, which is why a lot of American audiences did not know what it meant. So here's what it meant, I think. So Mickey got this from a British sitcom called Till Death Do Us Part. In that sitcom, there was a loudmouth man. He would insult his son-in-law using the phrase Randy Scouse Git. I'm not sure what Randy means. I think that might have been the character's name. But Scouse is slang for someone that lived close to Liverpool, and Git means incompetent, specifically a senile elderly person. Apparently, there's a hierarchy of insults in the UK. Being called a git is better than being called a wanker, but worse than being called a twit. The title had to be changed for releases over in England. They decided to call it alternate title. I think that Headquarters really does prove how much of a real band the Monkees are, how they weren't just made for TV. I do think that the Headquarters kind of pushed them in the right direction in their music because they got control. They really proved their worth. In 1967, they won 2 Emmy Awards for Outstanding Comedy Series, Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Comedy. It was unexpected as they went up against very big shows like Bewitched and The Andy Griffith Show. But although that they were amongst those big contenders, the Monkees won. Although they won an Emmy, apparently in the grand scheme of things, the Monkees' records outperformed the TV show in terms of ratings, which I find another point in their favor that the Monkees is in fact a real good functioning band. And I will die on that hill. Okay, so around this time they had begun touring again, and they had one of the craziest opening acts that you would not expect the Monkees to have. It did not go with the music that they did, and it did not go with the audience that they had. It was the Jimi Hendrix Experience. And I'm not saying the Jimi Hendrix Experience is bad, they're not. They're not my favorite band, but I do like their music. But it's just kind of weird to pair them together. So how did that happen? On June 18th, 1967, Hendrix performed at the Monterey International Pop Festival at the request of Paul McCartney. The Monterey Festival is a story in its own right, and I don't know a whole lot about it, so I would like to look into it someday. One of Jimmy's managers, Mike Jeffrey, approached him pitching this wonderful idea to tour America on a tour of a lifetime, he said, with none other than the Monkees. Jimmy's other manager, Chaz Chandler, was not thrilled with that idea. Chandler was a member of The Animals, another band from England, and could tell the mismatch between the Monkees and the Experience. Imagine, close your eyes and imagine that you're a 12-year-old girl going to a concert expecting to see the Monkees play bubblegum pop music, and you are welcomed with a man burning his guitar on stage. Which I doubt he actually did that, there. Mike Jeffrey did not understand why they did not want to go on tour with the Monkees, or why they were a mismatch. Apparently, in the UK, they toured with a band called the Walker Brothers, which I had never heard of, but I did a quick look at some of their songs, and that is an interesting choice to pair with Jimi Hendrix. But apparently it worked out, and the tour was a success. And I'm gonna be really honest, I think that British people have better taste in music than Americans. I don't know if that's a hot take, but since that tour with the Walker Brothers went over well, why wouldn't it go over well with the Monkees? Similar idea, right? Not really. Hendrix met a lot of people through doing this, though, especially musicians like David Crosby and Joni Mitchell. He particularly got really close with Peter Tork and Mickey Dolenz. Mickey Dolenz was the one to finally convince the Experience to join them on tour. The tour started on July 8th, 1967, when the Experience joined the Monkees and traveled to Jacksonville, Florida, where they would play at the Coliseum. On July 11th, they stopped in North Carolina. The Monkees thought that the Hendrix Experience was amazing. They loved them, but their audience was not on the same page. From backstage, the Monkees could hear shouting from the girls in the audience, "We want the Monkees! We want the Monkees!" Or, "Davy! Davy!" Later on, they had a stop in New York City, and that was it. Chaz Chandler requested that the Monkees and Jimmy split, and they did. They decided to put out a statement that said that Jimmy had been too erotic, but Hendrix was not going down without a fight. He had told NME, the magazine, that he had quit the tour and talked about all of the fans just screaming for the Monkees. The album that follows Headquarters was titled Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorns, and Jones LTD, which is this one. It's probably too dark for you to see. Oh, I have a second copy. Oh, I can't reach it. It's right behind me. Never mind. This is probably my favorite Monkees album. It's always been my favorite Monkees album. I don't know why. I think a lot of Nesmith's songs are really good on it, and I don't know, just all over I really like it. This album is also really special because it's one of the first popular music albums to feature the Moog synthesizer. Mickey Dolenz bought one of the first 20 Moog synthesizers ever sold. Also, okay, a note about the synthesizer. When doing research and finding pictures and stuff for this, it's really cool that they kept these records. So I want to be an archivist, and I'm actually starting grad school in the summer. I just think it's interesting what people decide to keep and what they don't. Somehow, some way, they kept all of the records for the Moog synthesizers, so I was able to find that Mickey Dolenz was not the first person to buy a Moog, but he was one of the first. Surprisingly, most of the songs on this album were not written by the Monkees. Only 3 of them feature as writing credits, and there were also tons of session musicians on this album. That's not a bad thing, because a lot of very accomplished musicians use session musicians, like Brian Wilson is a great example of that. But I do find it odd, because they fought so hard to have full control of their music. Why did they all of a sudden flip? The album went to #1 on the Billboard music charts here in the United States, but it did not hit that spot in any other country. The lead single on the album was called Pleasant Valley Sunday. That was written by Carole King. That peaked at #3 on the charts. Even though they did have a lot of session musicians on this album, they did maintain creative control. Season 2 had started by this time, and one thing they did that was kind of controversial is they opted to not include a laugh track in this season, and I did not notice that until after I read it, and then I went back and watched it, and yeah, there is no laugh track. The second season also changed in style. The Monkees started to wear more hippie-like clothing, and they wore their hair just a little bit longer than they had in the previous seasons. All good things have to come to an end, and in 1968, both the Monkees and NBC decided that the time had come to end the Monkees. They were running out of ideas. Episodes were starting to become too similar. The final episode was written by Mickey Dolenz, and it was supposed to be a satire of the industry ending the show by hypnotizing the viewers trying to seek world domination. And it was called Mijikojio, which was the name of Mickey's childhood dog, and it took the first section of each of his family members' names, so his name, his sister, and his parents, to make that new name. So there had been talk about changing the format if the show had been renewed for a third season, maybe doing sort of a variety show or sketch comedy kind of thing, because that was pretty popular in the late 60s, early 70s, but neither option worked out, unfortunately. However, although there wasn't a third season, there was, in fact, a movie. I would say everyone should watch it at least once. It's very 60s. So, the movie is called Head, and it was produced by... Was it A. Robert Redford, B. Warren Beatty, C. Jack Nicholson, or D. The Monkees? It was C. Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson was the producer of Head. Isn't that freaking crazy? That is so crazy to me. He was... Everything is connected. Remember my mind map? I really need to show it. My mom's like, I love this. I love your mind map. Speaking of mind map, I'm gonna do a little connection for you right off the top of my head, because it's my talent, and it's like the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, or whatever, 5, 7, 10, I don't know, but with everything. So, Jack Nicholson produced Head. He worked with Peter Fonda on Easy Rider, which was also produced by Raybert Productions, which produced The Monkees. Peter Fonda also had a movie called The Trip, which Jack Nicholson also worked on. Jack Nicholson was the screenwriter of that movie. And you know, my first ever video I ever posted on this channel is about my all-time favorite artist, at least one of the, like, top 5 for sure. Guess who had a cameo in The Trip? Graham Parsons. Everything's connected. Everything is connected. It's so crazy. And like, I mean, it's not unlikely because they were all in California in like the Laurel Canyon area, which is a whole thing in of itself. But I just think that is so cool. So, what is the movie Head about? My short answer is, I have no idea. Long answer, it's a satire of the film industry and big topics of the time, like the war in Vietnam. It was very psychedelic, it was surreal, it was oddly structured, there was no, like, storyline, really. According to Raffleson, they were under the influence of marijuana and LSD when they were writing the script, which makes a whole lot of sense if you see the movie. They were trying to deconstruct the Monkees, this manufactured pop image that they had. They were trying to break away from that squeaky clean image. The Monkees weren't able to direct the movie themselves, or take any screenwriting credit at all. They staged a walkout, but only 3 of them walked out. Poor Peter was the only one that was left on the first day of filming. None of the other 3 showed up. The studio did agree to give the band a larger percentage of the film's net profit, but the walkout damaged their relationship between Raffleson and Schneider and the Monkees, unfortunately. The movie was filmed all across California, in Long Beach, Pasadena, and San Francisco. The budget for the movie was $750,000, and it featured some very notable people like Annette Funicello, who was a Mouseketeer, Tony Basil, who was later a one-hit wonder, but she's a mega choreographer. Tony Basil was in Easy Rider, and you know who else was in Easy Rider? Frank Zappa also made an appearance in the movie, and he also appeared on the second season of the TV show, swapping places with Michael Nesmith. Not in like an actual episode, it was like a post-episode special thing. The soundtrack for the movie was written by the Monkees along with Carole King and Harry Nilsson. One song was actually written by Raffleson and Jack Nicholson. The song that was written by them was called Dirty Diego War Chant, and it was a parody of the TV show theme, and in the movie it was interrupted by footage of a Viet Cong operative being hurt very badly. Honestly, I really like the soundtrack. The music is really good. Circle Sky, Can You Dig It, and Daddy's Song are all great. I actually have the album with me. Here it is. It's hard to see because it's reflective, which is very unique. You can clearly tell it was well loved. I think the reason why it's reflective is so you can see yourself in it. See your own head. You know, you get it? Do you understand? There's the back. The marketing for the film was pretty bizarre. The tagline was, "Most extraordinary horror, adventure, western, comedy, love story, mystery, drama, musical, documentary, satire ever made," and that's putting it mildly. The original poster only had a picture of the PR man, whose name was John Brockman. No Monkees at all. And they had their own form of guerrilla marketing. Before guerrilla marketing was a huge thing, they had stickers that had head on it, and they were placed in random places around big cities to market the movie. And I can't find a single picture of one, but I would love to see one. I'd love to own one. That'd be really cool. A fun fact, this was actually one of the first films that was rated by the MPAA rating system. And the rating was G. I think that's weird because, I mean, there's no cursing. I don't think there's any nudity, but like there is footage of someone being shot in the head, man. Okay, a screening was held in 1968 in LA to poor reception, which led to 24 minutes being cut from the film. The final version of Head premiered in New York City in November of 1968, and then in Hollywood just a few days later. It did not do great at the box office. For a movie with a budget of $750,000, it grossed, drumroll, $16,111. Yep, which today would be $164,801. And I'm pretty sure the budget would have been over $1 million. I think I didn't convert that, and I don't know why. The soundtrack for the movie came out and it peaked at number 45. It was the first time that a Monkees album had not hit the top 5. Honestly, even though it's plotless and it's weird, I love it. It is really silly. It's not good, but it's fun to watch. I just really like watching the Monkees. They could sit there and watch paint dry, and I would sit there and watch paint dry with the Monkees. If you really think about it, they were probably high the entire time that they were making this movie, so that makes a lot more sense too. There's a scene in the movie where they get vacuumed by a vacuum cleaner. I've had dreams like that. I love it. It's just so stupid. There is also a scene with Tony Basil dancing with Davy to Daddy's Song, and it's so cool. Like, it goes back and forth between different colors, and I don't know, there's just something about the mid to late 60s that I love the aesthetic of it. I don't know, every decade has its problems, The late 60s was not immune to that. The whole entire 60s was not immune to that, obviously. I just really admire the pop culture, I guess. Like, so many good things came out of the 60s in terms of music and movies, TV shows, books, all kinds of stuff. If you ever want to watch Head, it is free on Tubi, I believe, and I think it's free on YouTube too. So how did the Monkees feel about Head? They hated it. Nesmith said that, well, he had conflicting thoughts. At one point, he said it was the murder of the Monkees. But later, he said that he actually really liked what they wrote, and it was pretty accurate to the feelings of the time. Peter Tork felt that the project wasn't good for them, and Davy Jones said that they should have never done it. Their next album, The Birds, the Bees, and the Monkees, would be the last one that they would release as a full band in the 1960s. And it's that one right there. I don't think you can see it, but that's okay. I had a hard time finding it, actually. I don't remember when I got it, but I got it way later after I got all the other Monkees albums. But I also don't have any albums after that one, so that's something I'm working on. This album came out before the movie Head, but I think it was released either towards the very end or after the second season of the show. It went all the way to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts, and they had a number 1 hit with the song Daydream Believer, and Valerie was also pretty popular, hitting number 3. This album is when each band member started to drift. They started working individually or on their own sessions. The album is also pretty diverse, kind of like Headquarters. Davy's songs are kind of more Broadway. Michael's songs are pretty country. Mickey's sound more soulful, and Tork's songs were considered, but there were none included. No Peter Tork songs included. He really got effed over, honestly. He got the shit end of the stick. Peter, actually, besides playing the piano on Daydream Believer, did not participate in any other part of the album at all. So it comes as no surprise that Peter was the first one to leave the band. He said he was exhausted, and he spent all of his money buying out the last few years of his contract for $160,000, which left him broke. The other Monkees didn't have bad feeling towards him at all, and they didn't blame him for leaving. The other 3 Monkees, have said that he was the only one who didn't play someone on the show that was like him in real life. In real life, he was incredibly smart, he was incredibly talented, but on the show, he was pretty dumb. So I think it just kind of ruined his persona, which is unfortunate. It's really sad. It's kind of like being typecast, you know? But he was never cast in anything again, really. So before Peter left, there was one final TV special. It was called 33 1/3 Revolutions per Monkey, and it was recorded and released on April 14th, 1969. This special was actually filmed in 1968 after Head, but before Peter had left the band. Okay, so this is where I'm going to end part 2. I feel like it's a little anticlimactic, but I wanted to save their post-Monkees career and then the resurgence for the last part, because I just felt like that was, I don't know, it just made sense in my head. I really hope that the audio sounds a lot better this time. I really enjoy this, honestly. It's nice that people like to watch and listen and comment and whatever, but I also just do this for myself because it's an outlet, you know? It's an outlet for me to talk about things that I love. Anyway, actually, I have a piece of merch. This piece of merch, Monkees merch, it's a button. It's really rusted. A friend of mine found it a long time ago in like a storage room, so it's in rough shape. It actually might be legit vintage. I don't know, but I could have sworn I saw a copyright date of the 90s on here, but I can't find that now, so maybe not. So I mentioned this earlier in the video in passing, but I will be starting grad school in the summer. It's all online. I'm going for an MSLS, so it's a Master's of Science in Library Science. Come here. Oh, wait. Hi, look. She's fat and angry. As always, thank you for watching. Please like this video if you liked it. If you didn't like it, don't dislike it because you'll make me cry. Just kidding. It does make me feel a little sad. If you have any ideas for topics that I should cover, let me know. But I was gonna say it might slow down just a little bit due to grad school. Oh, one more thing. The music, the background music in the last video, minus one song, I did by myself. They're all based off Monkees songs. I took the chords from 3 Monkees songs, put it into GarageBand, and then I just made it my own. Let me know what you thought about this. I love having conversations about these topics. I'll see you guys in part 3. Okay, bye!